Good evening, my friends. It's Indiana Holmes for story time, and tonight we continue with our book, The Maltese Falcon. It looks like Mr. Cairo has gotten himself into another bit of trouble with Miss O'Shaughnessy. Well, where we left off, we had detectives at the door of Sam Spade, and Miss O'Shaughnessy and Mr. Cairo in a back room of Mr. Spade's apartment. That's where we pick up. So let's continue. Chapter 8. Horse Feathers. Bridget O'Shaughnessy was huddled in the armchair by the table. Her forearms were up over her cheeks, her knees drawn up until it hid the lower part of her face. Her eyes were white-circled and terrified. Joel Cairo stood in front of her, bending over her, holding in one hand the pistol Spade had twisted out of his hand. His other hand was clapped to his forehead. Blood ran through the fingers of that hand and down under them to his eyes. A small trickle from his cut lip made 3 wavy lines across his chin. Cairo did not heed the detectives. He was glaring at the girl huddled in front of him. His lips were working spasmodically, but no coherent sound came from between them. Dundee, the first of the 3 into the living room, moved swiftly to Cairo's side, put a hand on his own hip and under his overcoat and a hand on the Levantine's wrist, and growled, "What are you up to here?" Cairo took the red-smeared hand from his head and flourished it close to the lieutenant's face. Uncovered by the hand, his forehead showed a 3-inch ragged tear. "This is what she's done," he cried. "Look at it." The girl put her feet down on the floor and looked warily from Dundee, holding Cairo's wrist, to Tom Paulus, standing a little behind them, to Spade, leaning against the doorframe. Spade's face was placid. When his gaze met hers, his yellow-gray eyes glinted for an instant with malicious humor and then became expressionless again. "Did you do that?" Dundee asked the girl, nodding at Cairo's cut head. She looked at Spade again. He did not in any way respond to the appeal in her eyes. He leaned against the doorframe and observed the occupants of the room with a polite detachment and an air of disinterested spectator. The girl turned her eyes to Dundee's. Her eyes were wide and dark and earnest. "I had to," she said in a low, throbbing voice. "I was all alone in here with him when he attacked me. I tried to keep him off. I couldn't make myself shoot him." "Oh, you liar!" Cairo cried, trying unsuccessfully to pull the arm that held his pistol out of Dundee's grip. "You're a dirty liar, a dirty, filthy liar." He twisted himself around to face Dundee. "She's lying, awfully lying. I came here in good faith, and I was attacked by both of them. And when you came in, he went out to talk to you, leaving her here with this pistol. And then she said they were going to kill me after you left, and I called for help so you wouldn't leave me here to be murdered. And then she struck me with that pistol." "Here, give me this thing," Dundee said, and took the pistol from Cairo's hand. "Now let's get this straight. What'd you come here for?" "He sent for me." Cairo twisted his head around to stare defiantly at Spade. "He called me on the phone and asked me to come here." Spade blinked sleepily at the Levantine and said nothing. Dundee asked, "What do he want you for?" Cairo held his reply until he had mopped his bloody forehead and his chin with a lavender-barred silk handkerchief. By then, some of the indignation in his manner had been replaced by caution. "He said they wanted to see me. I didn't know about what." Tom Paulus lowered his head, sniffed the odor of the Schiefer, and then, mopping the handkerchief had released in the air, and turned his head to scowl interrogatively at Spade. Spade winked at him and went on rolling a cigarette. Dundee asked, "Well, what happened then?" "They attacked me. She stuck me first, and then he choked me, and they took the pistol out of my pocket. I don't know what they would have done next if you hadn't arrived at that moment. I dare say they would have murdered me then and there. When he went out to answer the bell, he left me here with the pistol to watch over me." Bridget O'Shaughnessy jumped out of the armchair, crying, "Why don't you make him tell the truth?" and slapped Cairo on the cheek. Cairo yelled inarticulately. Dundee pushed the girl back into the chair with the hand that was not holding the Levantine's arm and growled, "None of that now." Spade, lighting his cigarette, grinned softly through the smoke and told Tom, "She's impulsive." "Yeah," Tom agreed. Dundee scowled down at the girl and asked, "What do you want us to think the truth is?" "Not what he said," she replied. "Not anything he said." She turned to Spade. "Is it?" "How do I know?" Spade responded. "I was out in the kitchen mixing an omelet when all this happened, wasn't I?" She wrinkled her forehead, studying him with her eyes that perplexedly clouded. Tom grunted in disgust. Dundee, still scowling at the girl, ignored Spade's speech and asked her, "If he's not telling the truth, how come he did the squawking for help and not you?" "Oh, he was frightened to death when I struck him," she replied, looking contemptuously at the Levantine. Cairo's face flushed where it was not blood-smeared. He exclaimed, "Poof! Another lie!" She kicked his leg, and the high heel of her blue slipper striking him just below the knee, Dundee pulled him away from her, while Big Tom came to stand close to her, rumbling, "Behave, sister. That's no way to act." "Then make him tell the truth," she said defiantly. "We'll do that all right," he promised. "Just don't get rough." Dundee, looking at Spade with green eyes, hard and bright and satisfied, addressed his subordinate. "Well, Tom, I don't guess we'll go wrong pulling the lot of 'em in." Tom nodded gloomily. Spade left the door and advanced to the center of the room, dropping his cigarette into a tray on the table and passed it. His smile manner were amiably composed. "Don't be in a hurry," he said. "Everything can be explained." "I bet you," Dundee agreed, sneering. Spade bowed to the girl. "Miss O'Shaughnessy," he said, "may I present Lieutenant Dundee and Detective Sergeant Paulus." He bowed to Dundee. "Miss O'Shaughnessy is an operative in my employ." Joel Cairo said indignantly, "That isn't so. She—" Spade interrupted him in a quiet, loud, but still genial voice. "I hired her just recently, yesterday. This is Mr. Joel Cairo, a friend, an acquaintance, at any rate, of Thursby's. He came to me this afternoon and tried to hire me to find something Thursby was supposed to have on him when he was bumped off. It looked funny, the way he put it to me, so I wouldn't touch it. Then he pulled a gun. Well, never mind that, unless it comes to a point of laying charges against each other. Anyway, after talking it over with Miss O'Shaughnessy, I thought maybe I could get something out of him about Miles and Thursby's killings, so I asked him to come up here. Maybe we put the questions to him a little rough, but he wasn't hurt anyway, not enough to have to cry for help. I'd already had to take his gun away from him again." As Spade talked, anxiety came into Cairo's reddened face. His eyes moved jerkily up and down, shifting their focus uneasily between the floor and Spade's bland face. Dundee confronted Cairo and brusquely demanded, "Well, what have you got to say to that?" Cairo had nothing to say for nearly a minute while he stared at the lieutenant's chest. When he lifted his eyes, they were shy and wary. "I don't know what I should say," he murmured. His embarrassment seemed genuine. "Try telling us the facts," Dundee suggested. "The facts?" Cairo's eyes fidgeted, though their gaze did not actually leave the lieutenant's. "What assurance have I that the facts will be believed?" "Quit stalling. All you've got to do is swear to a complaint that they took a poke at you, and the warrant clerk will believe you enough to issue a warrant that'll let us throw them in the can." Spade spoke in an amused tone. "Go ahead, Cairo. Make him happy. Tell him you'll do it, and then we'll swear to one against you, and he'll have the lot of us." Cairo cleared his throat and looked nervously around the room, not into the eyes of anyone there. Dundee blew his breath through his nose in a puff that was not quite a snort and said, "Get your hats." Cairo's eyes, holding worry and a question, met Spade's mocking gaze. Spade winked at him and sat on the arm of the padded rocker. "Well, boys and girls," he said, grinning at the Levantine, and at the girl with nothing but delight in his voice and a grin. "We put it over nicely." Dundee's hard square face darkened, the least of shades. He repeated peremptorily, "Get your hats." Spade turned his grin on the lieutenant, squirmed into a more comfortable position on the chair arm, and asked lazily, "Don't you know when we're kidding?" Tom Paulus's face became red and shiny. Dundee's face, still darkening, was immobile, except for his lips moving stiffly to say, "No, but we'll let that wait till we get down to the hall." Spade rose and put his hands in his trouser pockets. He stood erect, so that might look that much farther down at the lieutenant. His grin was taut and self-certainly spoke in the very line of his posture. "I dare you to take us in, Dundee," he said. "We'll laugh at you in every newspaper in San Francisco. You don't think any of us is going to swear to any complaints against the others, do you? Wake up. You've been kidded. When the bell rang, I said to Miss O'Shaughnessy and Cairo, 'It's those damn bulls again. They're getting to be nuisances. Let's play a joke on them. When you hear them going, one of you scream, and then we'll see how far we can string them along before they tumble.'" And Bridget O'Shaughnessy bent forward in her chair and began to laugh hysterically. Cairo started to smile. There was no vitality in his smile, but he held it fixed on his face. Tom, glowering, grumbled, "Cut it out, Sam." Spade chuckled and said, "But that's the way it was. And the cut on his head and his mouth?" Dundee asked scornfully. "Where'd that come from?" "Ask him," Spade suggested. "Maybe he cut himself shaving." Cairo spoke quickly before he could be questioned, and the muscles of his face quivered under the strain of holding a smile in place as he spoke. "I fell. We intended to be struggling for the pistol when you came in, but I fell. I tripped on the end of the rug and fell while we were pretending to struggle." Dundee said, "Horse feathers." Spade said, "That's all right, Dundee. Believe it or not, the point is that that's our story, and we'll stick to it. The newspapers will print it whatever they believe or whatever they don't believe. And it'll just be as funny one way or the other, or more so. What are you going to do about it? It's no crime to kid a copper, is it? You haven't got anything on anybody here. Everything we've told you is part of a joke. What are you going to do about it?" Dundee put his back to Spade and gripped Cairo by the shoulders. "You can't get away with that," he snarled, shaking the Levantine. "You belched for help, and you've got to take it." "No, sir," Cairo sputtered. "It was a joke. He said you were friends of his and you would understand." Spade laughed. Dundee pulled Cairo roughly around, holding him now by the wrist and the nape of the neck. "I'll take you along for packing the gun anyway," he said, "and I'll take the rest of you along to see who laughs at the joke." Cairo's alarmed eyes jerked sideways to focus on Spade's. Spade said, "Don't be a sap, Dundee. The gun was part of the plant. It was all one of mine." He laughed. "Too bad it's only a .32, or maybe you could find it was the one Thursby and Miles were shot with." Dundee released Cairo, spun on his heels, and his right fist clicked on Spade's chin. Bridget O'Shaughnessy uttered a short cry. Spade's smile flickered out for an instant of the impact, but returned immediately with a dreamy quality added. He steadied himself with a short backward step, and his thick sloping shoulders writhed under his coat. Before his fist could come up, Tom Paulus had pushed himself between the two men, facing Spade, encumbering Spade's arm with its closeness of his barrel-like belly and his own arms. No, for Christ's sake," Tom begged. After a long moment of motionless, Spade's muscles relaxed. "Then get him out of here quick," he said. His smile had gone away again, leaving his face sullen and somewhat pale. Tom, staying close to Spade, keeping his arms on Spade's arms, turned his head to look over his shoulder at the lieutenant. Tom's small eyes were reproachful. Dundee's fists were clenched in front of his body, and his feet were planted firm and a little apart on the floor. The truculence in his face was modified by thin rims of white showing between green irises and upper eyelids. "Get the names and addresses," he ordered. Tom looked at Cairo, who said quickly, "Joel Cairo, Hotel Belvedere." Spade spoke before Tom could question the girl. "You can always get in touch with Miss O'Shaughnessy through me." Tom looked at Dundee. Dundee growled, "Get her address." Spade said, "Her address is in care of my office." Dundee took a step forward, halting in front of the girl. "Where do you live?" he asked. Spade addressed Tom. "Get him out of here. I've had enough of this." Tom looked at Spade's eyes, hard and glittering, and mumbled, "Take it easy, Sam." He buttoned his coat and turned to Dundee, asking in a voice that aped casualness, "Well, is that it?" and taking a step towards the door. Dundee scowled and failed to conceal his indecision. Cairo moved suddenly towards the door, saying, "I'm going too, if Mr. Spade will be kind enough to give me my hat and coat." Spade asked, "What's the hurry?" Dundee said angrily, "It was all in fun, but just the same, you're afraid to be left here with them." "Not at all," the Levantine replied, fidgeting and looking at neither of them. "But it's quite late, and I'm going. I'll go out with you if you don't mind." Dundee put his lips together firmly and said nothing. A light was glinting in his green eyes. Spade went to the closet in the passageway and fetched Cairo's hat and coat. Spade's face was blank. His voice held the same blankness when he stepped back from helping the Levantine into his coat and said to Tom, "Tell him to leave the gun." Dundee took Cairo's pistol from his overcoat pocket and put it on the table. He went out first with Cairo on his heels. Tom halted in front of Spade, muttering, "I hope to God you know what you're doing." Got no response, sighed, followed the others. Spade went out after them as far as the bend of the passageway, where he stood until Tom had closed the corridor door. Chapter 9. Bridget. Spade returned to the living room and sat at the end of the sofa, elbows on knees, cheeks on hands, looking at the floor and not at Bridget O'Shaughnessy, smiling weakly at him in front of the armchair. His eyes were sultry. The creases between brows over his nose were deep. His nostrils moved in and out with his breathing. Bridget O'Shaughnessy, when it became apparent that he was not going to look up at her, stopped smiling and regarded him with a growling uneasiness. I should say a growing uneasiness. Red rage came suddenly into his face, and he began to talk in a harsh, guttural voice. Holding his maddened face in his hands, glaring at the floor, he cursed Dundee for 5 minutes without a break, cursed him obscenely, blasphemously, repetitiously, and in a harsh, guttural voice. Then he took his face out of his hands, looked at the girl, grinned sheepishly, and said, "Childish, huh? I know, but, by God, I do hate being hit without hitting back." He touched his chin with careful fingers. Not that it was so much of a sock at that. He laughed and lounged back on the sofa, crossing his legs. A cheap enough price to pay for winning. His brows came together in a fleeting scowl, though I'll remember it. The girl, smiling again, left the chair and sat on the sofa beside him. "You're absolutely the wildest person I've known," she said. Do you always carry on so high-handed?" "I let him hit me, didn't I?" "Oh, yes, but a police official." "It wasn't that," Spade explained. "It wasn't that in losing his head and slugging me he overplayed his hand. If I'd mixed it up with him, then he couldn't have backed down. He'd have had to go through with it, and we'd have all had to tell that goofy story at headquarters." He stared thoughtfully at the girl and asked, "What did you do to Cairo?" "Nothing." Her face became flushed. "I tried to frighten him into keeping still until they had gone and either got too frightened or stubborn to yell." "And then you smacked him with the gun?" "I had to. He attacked me." "You don't know what you're doing." Spade smiled, did not hide his annoyance. "It's just that what I told you You're fumbling along by guess and God. I'm sorry, she said, face and voice soft with contrition. I'm sorry, Sam. Sure you are. He took tobacco and papers from his pockets and began to make a cigarette. Now you've had your talk with Cairo. Now can you talk to me? She put her fingertip to her mouth, staring across the room at nothing, then widened eyes, and then, with narrower eyes, glanced quickly at Spade. He was engrossed in the making of a cigarette. Oh, yes, she began. Of course. She took the finger away from her mouth and smoothed her blue dress over her knees. She frowned at her knees. Spade licked his cigarette, sealed it, and asked, Well? While he felt for his lighter. But I didn't, she said, pausing between words as if she were selecting them with great care. I didn't have time to finish talking to him. She stopped frowning at her knees and looked at Spade with clear, candid eyes. We were interrupted almost before we began. Spade lighted his cigarette and laughed, his mouth empty of smoke. Want me to phone him and ask him to come back? She shook her head, not smiling. Her eyes moved back and forth between her lids, and she shook her head, maintaining their focus on Spade's eyes. Her eyes were inquisitive. Spade put his arm around her back, cupping his hand over her smooth, bare, white shoulder, farthest from him. She leaned back into the bend of his arm. He said, Well, I'm listening. She twisted her head around to smile at him with a playful insolence, asking, Do you need your arm there for that? No. He removed his hand from her shoulder and let his arm drop down behind her. You're altogether unpredictable, she murmured. He nodded and said amiably, I'm still listening. Look, at the time, she exclaimed, wriggling a finger at the alarm clock perched at the top on the top book saying 2:50 with its clumsy shaped hands. Uh-huh. It's been a busy evening. I must go. She rose from the sofa. This is terrible. Spade did not rise. He shook his head and said, Not until you've told me about it. But look at the time, she protested, and it would take hours to tell you. It'll have to take time then. Am I a prisoner? She asked gaily. Besides, the kid's outside. Maybe he hasn't gone home yet. Maybe he hasn't gone home to sleep yet. Her gaiety vanished. Do you think he's still there? It's likely. She shivered. Could you find out? I could go down and see. Oh, that's... will you? Spade studied her anxious face for a moment and then got up from the sofa, saying, Sure. He got a hat and overcoat from the closet. I'll be gone about 10 minutes. Do be careful, she begged as she followed him to the corridor. He said, I will, and went out. Post Street was empty when Spade issued into it. He walked east a block, crossed the street, and walked 2 blocks west to the other side, recrossed it, returned to the building without having seen anyone except 2 mechanics working on a car in the garage. When he opened his apartment door, Bridget O'Shaughnessy was standing at the bend in the passageway, holding Cairo's pistol straight down at her side. He's still there, Spade said. She bit the inside of her lip and turned slowly, going back into the living room. Spade followed her in, put his hat and overcoat on a chair and said, So we'll have time to talk, and went into the kitchen. He had put the coffee pot on the stove when he came to the door and was slicing a slender loaf of French bread. She stood in the doorway and watched him with preoccupied eyes. The fingers of her left hand idly caressed the body of the barrel of the pistol in her right hand, which was still held there. The tablecloth's in there, he said, pointing to the bread knife at the cupboard, and was one breakfast nook partition. She set the table while he spread liverwurst on it, or put cold corned beef between the small ovals of bread he had sliced. Then he poured some coffee, added brandy to it from a squat bottle, and they sat at the table. They sat side by side on one of the benches. She put the pistol down on the end of the bench nearer her. You can start now, between bites, he said. She made a face at him and complained. You're the most insistent person, and a bit of a sandwich, too. And so she bit into the sandwich. Yes, wild and predictable. What's this bird, this falcon, that everybody's all steamed up about? She chewed the beef and the bread in her mouth, swallowed it, looked attentively at the small crescent it removed, her teeth had made in the sandwich's rim, and asked, Suppose I wouldn't tell you anything at all about it. What would you do? You mean about the bird? I mean about the whole thing. I wouldn't be too surprised, he told her, grinning, so that the edges of his jaw teeth were visible, to know what to do next. And that would be... She transferred her attention from the sandwich to his face. That's what I want to know. What would you do next? He shook his head. Mockery rippled in a smile on her face. Something wild and unpredictable? Maybe. But I don't see what you've got to gain by covering up now. It's coming out bit by bit anyhow. There's a lot of it. I don't know. But there's some of it I do. And some more that I can guess at. And give me another day like this, I'll soon be knowing all the things about it, and some things you don't. I suppose you do now, she said, looking at her sandwich again, her face serious. But, I'm so tired of it, and I do so hate having to talk about it. Wouldn't it be just as well to wait to let you learn about it as you say you will? Spade laughed. I don't know. You'll have to figure that out for yourself. My way of learning is to leave a wild and unpredictable monkey wrench into the machinery. It's all right with me if you're sure none of the flying species will hurt you. She moved her bare shoulders uneasily, but said nothing. Several minutes they ate in silence. He phlegmatically, she thoughtfully. Then she said in a hushed voice, I'm afraid of you, and that's the truth. He said, That's not the truth. It is, she insisted in the same low voice. I know 2 men, and I'm afraid of... I've seen them both tonight. I can understand your being afraid of Cairo, Spade said. He's out of your reach. And you aren't. Not the way he said. And then he grinned. She blushed. She picked up a slice of bread encrusted with gray liverwurst. She put it down on her plate. She wrinkled her white forehead and said, It's a black figure, as you know, smooth and shiny, of a bird, a hawk or a falcon, about that high. She held her hands about a foot apart. What makes it important? She sipped coffee and brandy before she took her head. I don't know, she said. They'd never tell me. They promised me £5,000 if I'd help them get to it. Then Floyd said after we'd left Joe, that he'd give me $750. So it must be worth $750? Oh, much more than that, she said. They didn't pretend that they were sharing equally with me. They were simply hiring me to help them. To help them? How? She lifted her cup to her lips again. Spade, not moving the domineering stare of his yellow-gray eyes from her face, began to make a cigarette. Behind them, a percolator bubbled on the stove. To help them get it from the man who had it, she said slowly when she had lowered her cup. A Russian named Kimidov. How? Oh, but that's not important, she objected, and wouldn't help you, she smiled imprudently, and is certainly none of your business. This was in Constantinople? She hesitated, nodded, and said, Marmora. He waved a cigarette at her, saying, Go ahead. What happened? But that's all. I've told you. They promised me £5,000 to help them, and I did. And then we found that Joel Cairo meant to desert us, taking the Falcon with him and leaving us nothing. So we did exactly that to him first. But then I wasn't any better off than I had been before, because Floyd hadn't any intention at all of paying me the £750 he had promised me. I had learned that by that time we had got to the point where he just wasn't going to give me the money. He said we would go to New York where he would sell it and then he would give me my share. But I could see he wasn't telling me the truth. Indignation darkened her eyes. Her eyes seemed to change to violet. And that's why I came to you to get help, for you to help me learn where the Falcon is. And suppose you'd got it, then what? Then I'd have been in a position to talk terms with Mr. Floyd Thursby. Spade squinted at her and suggested, but you wouldn't have known where to take it to get the money. Then he'd give it to you? The larger sum that you knew he expected to sell it for? I did not know, she said. Spade scowled at the ashes he dumped on his plate. What makes it worth all the money? He demanded. You must have some idea, at least an able guess. I haven't got the slightest idea. He directed the scowl at her. What's it made of? Porcelain or black stone. I don't know. I never touched it. I've only seen it once, for a few minutes. Floyd showed it to me when we first got hold of it. Spade mashed the end of a cigarette into his plate and made one draught of a coffee and a brandy in his cup. His scowl had gone away. He wiped his eyes, and then he wiped his lips with a napkin, dropped it, crumpled it on a table, and spoke casually. You're a liar. She got up and stood at the end of the table, looking down at him with dark, abashed eyes in a pinkening face. I'm a liar, she said. I have always been a liar. Don't brag about it. It's childish. His voice was good-humored. He came out from between tables and bench. Was there any truth at all in that yarn? She hung her head. Dampness glistened on her dark lashes. Some, she whispered. How much? Not very much. Spade put a hand under his chin, and then he took the hand and placed it under her chin and lifted her head. He laughed into her wet eyes and said, We've got all night before us. I'll put some more brandy and some more coffee, and we'll try again. Her eyelids drooped. Oh, I'm tired, she said tremulously. So tired of it all, of myself, of lying, of thinking up lies, and not knowing what is a lie and what is the truth. I wish I... She put her hands up to Spade's cheeks, put her open mouth hard against his mouth, her body flat against his body. Spade's arms went around her, holding her to him, muscles bulging in his blue sleeves, a hand cradling her head, its first fingers half almost among red hair, a hand moving groping fingers over her slim back. His eyes burned yellowy. And that, my friends, is the end of Chapter 9. I think we will continue this tomorrow with Chapter 10. Thank you for joining me. This has been Indiana Holmes. Love to you all. Good night.
Please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. Thank you very much.